All right, as soon as it pops, we'll know. There it is. Well, Rob, welcome. Thank you for being on A Name for Yourself podcast, enjoying a cup of coffee together.
All right. Thanks for the invite, Max.
A high quality cup of coffee together. Definitely not basic Folgers coffee.
You know, it's part of the best part of waking up.
You just unlocked like a secret memory I forgot I had from my childhood. The theme song. That's awesome. Well, this will be done soon. We can enjoy a cup of coffee. But while that brews, obviously I know you well, so I won't pretend that I don't.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I thought you'd be a phenomenal guest on this episode was because you're a guy that has a part of quite a few different entities that you play a significant role in my observations. You bring foundationally kind of similar things to each, but I think you bring like a uniqueness to each, and you balance them really well. So I think a lot of people, if they knew sort of more intimately kind of your life or how that works, they'd be really curious of just how does that happen? How does a person do that? Because it's not very traditional, just 40 hours a week at one job, which I think is what a lot of people coming out of college or even in high school looking forward are expecting a high probability that that's the greatest opportunity for them is to do one thing for, as long as they can and maybe jump around, but you're really going to do one thing and maybe, volunteer somewhere in your spare time. But you don't really fit that mold.
No, I don't know what that would be like even. But I understand what you're saying.
Sure. Yeah. So you are you're one of the owners of an organization called SightCal with two other guys, correct?
Yes.
The three of you. You also work at Relco, which is a local business here. And then you're also one of the pastors at Grace Life Church.
Yes.
Does that adequately sum up sort of the three entities you're a part of? Am I forgetting any entities?
Volunteer chaplain for the Balaton Fire Department.
That's right. That's been at least 2 or 3 years now.
It's coming up on 2 years.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. So of those, which one would you say was the first or you've done the longest?
I've been connected relationally with the guys from SightCal, the guys I'm partnered up with. We worked together in the mid to late 90s and then formally joined up in business together in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
With Relco, just experienced my 10-year anniversary there.
Awesome.
Normally we get to get called up in front and all that at the Christmas party, but with the way last year went, I had a award in my mailbox.
You probably preferred it that way. You're not really
Absolutely.
like a big stand up and get praised kind of guy.
Absolutely. That would be my first choice every time.
That's kind of like a special treat just for you.
Yeah. Grace Life, I've been on staff as a pastor for going over 15 years this year,
mm-hmm.
and serving in various capacities prior for
Sure.
a lot of years.
Yeah. And people might be surprised to learn also that so two of them, Grace Life and Relco, are in the same city, but
Yes.
SightCal is not. It's like 2 to 3 hours northeast of here.
It's in the north part of the Twin Cities metro area.
Yeah. Yep. So is that explain kind of navigating being a part of that leadership team while being kind of physically distant and how
Mm-hmm.
that balance goes?
The nice thing about these three positions is they are somewhat related, even though they're very separate organizations like you were talking about. So I can do them all throughout the course of the day, oftentimes flip-flopping
Mm-hmm.
between positions, or one phone call leading to the next email, to the next thing I'm focusing on, could vary one to the next pretty rapidly. And I don't necessarily start my day at 9 and end it at 5. I'll spend early mornings, evenings, weekend time doing any one of those positions.
Sure. That makes sense. And we should probably just cover the basics of what does SightCal do?
SightCal is a calibration service provider. So we service measurement equipment for mainly the pharmaceutical and medical device industries.
Awesome. And what specifically do you sort of manage from the leadership team's perspective of SightCal?
The nice part is with a small business, much like I don't have a 40-hour a week job, I don't have a singular role
Sure.
at any position
Mm-hmm.
either. It's human resources, helping with the existing people, what they need, establishing policy, managing payroll, all those basic things,
Mm-hmm.
working on filling open positions. And then there's a quality aspect that I perform, and then there's accounts payable, accounts receivable. There's occasionally mowing the lawn.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
It could be about anything.
Is it probably the most similar crossover with some of the SightCal HR and administrative duties to Grace Life and some of those?
Yeah, from an organizational development standpoint, which
Hmm.
is something else I focus on there, it's more closely related to Grace Life.
Yeah. And at Ralco, I don't know exactly what your title is, but I know you do a lot with like big project
Hmm.
management. Usually it's like physical building project management.
Yeah, big projects like when the women's bathroom sewer starts to back up.
That can be a big
That
project.
is a big project sometimes.
Sure, yeah.
So it could be as mundane as that,
Hmm.
or it could be building new facilities, new warehouses.
Sure.
None of that happens in a bubble where it's just me.
Hmm.
It's definitely with a team. There's other people that are involved, and my primary role is to kind of have the overall picture in mind, know what the overall budget is, the
Hmm.
timeline, answering questions to keep contractors moving, that type of thing. With all these things, none of them are hourly type duties where I could punch in and punch out and be paid for a specific period of time.
Hmm.
They're all responsibility based.
Sure.
So I'm being in those positions to shoulder a certain amount of responsibility.
Yeah. It probably really only works in positions like that. I mean, it'd be difficult to manage that many different roles if it was hourly based.
Yeah, if I had to be at a workstation and producing a certain component,
Hmm.
couldn't do it.
Yeah. So when you sort of take a glimpse at your current situation, just the three, four things that you're involved in, uh, would you say 15 years ago or 20 years ago that 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 Rob was looking forward and saying, that's what I'm going to try and do. That's what I'm sort of looking for. Or how did you kind of get here?
I was spending some time driving the other day, and I was pondering not only where I'm at, but where I want to go.
Hmm.
And I was thinking about, okay, I've got this goal and that goal, and I want to get here and I want to get there. How do I get there? What's my plan? What are my
Hmm.
action steps and all these kinds of things? And then I was challenged internally to think about, well, where am I? Where am I right now?
Yeah.
And how did I get here? And I felt very strongly convicted that I didn't get me here.
Mm.
I did things along the way, but it was the hand of God in my life. Some might call it divine providence that brought me from where I was, changed me from who I was into who I am, and brought me to this place.
Hmm.
So why should I think it would be anything different to take me to where I'm going next?
Hmm. Yeah, that's good. So where you don't have to get specific, but where would that next be, or what is it that you kind of look to think, uh, here's what I'd like to see. Here's some changes I'd like to either kind of incorporate into what you're already doing, or make
Mm.
pivots. Anything you're comfortable saying.
If you look around the business community, even right here in Marshall,
Mm-hmm.
there is a tremendous amount of exiting going on. I wouldn't call it succession going on.
Sure. Yeah.
It's just people are aging out, checking out
Mm.
for whatever reason, whether it's a trade or a business. Um, People are leaving the workforce,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of a generational thing that creates a huge void of no one doing certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of opportunity there, but it also creates an awareness that I'll be there at some point.
Sure.
10 to 15 years, where would I
Mm-hmm.
be? I would be getting a discount at Perkins.
It's good. Yeah. So, I mean, as a guy who obviously has had to uh, evaluate a fair number of opportunities that come across your path and either say yes to them or say no to them, how do you look at, something? I mean, obviously, if you end up in a situation like you're in, where you have, kind of four different things that you prioritize professionally, how is it that you evaluate a potential decision to know that this is the right thing I should incorporate? You're sacrificing other areas that aren't
Hmm.
going to get as much now, or that you couldn't, maybe do other things that might come the very next day as an opportunity because you're saying yes to this today. How do you think through those decisions?
Could you maybe narrow that down into a specific category?
Yes, I can. And while I do that, I'm going to pour you a cup of coffee. So, like, when thinking of, I want to take on being a chaplain of the Ballatin Fire Department,
Hmm.
um, that is not anything that's inherently Grace Life related,
No,
inherently Relco related, or
no,
SightCal. There's crossover, there's familiar faces and people and all that, and it's not as if it's, you know 80 hours a week that you're taking on, but it's
no.
also not nothing. So something like that, what would compel you to say, I feel like it's the right thing. I feel like I'm gonna actually commit and say that this is the thing I'm gonna incorporate now.
The way that that came about was uh, through a related incident. Encountered a car accident in the area, and those guys from the department, men and women, were the ones that responded.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process of going through the trauma of that for myself, I wasn't in the accident. I didn't do much when I got there. Um, I just had a deep appreciation for who they are and the
Mm-hmm.
role they provide. And my father-in-law, who had served as a chaplain for some other organizations, brought up the notion of, hey, maybe they could use a chaplain
Mm-hmm.
within their department. And it was a way to somewhat give back, but more than giving back, it was a way to engage as a part of that community service down
Mm-hmm.
there. Uh, Personally, I have some family ties that go back to the Ballatin area from when I was born, actually. My family lived just outside of town, and my mother ran a beauty parlor in downtown Ballatin.
I didn't
So
know that.
old ties going way
Mm-hmm.
back.
Cool. Yeah, that is. I mean, that is a good way to look at it. It's like you observed this really critical operation that you had some respect and admiration for, and felt like there were certain maybe it's weird to call them skills. Maybe it's
No,
disciplines.
no, you could actually cut in right there and play the Liam
Yes.
quote.
Right?
I have a particular set of skills.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That you felt like you could bring in and minister to these people that see a lot, serve a lot, go through a lot, and maybe always don't prioritize their own spiritual health, mental health, and kind of be a way of supporting that structure.
Yep. The chaplaincy is really all about helping the individual firefighter or ambulance crew member stay in that role as long as they can.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's all kinds of things they're experiencing every call that weigh on them. And at some point, it's too much.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with those things?
Yeah.
You can't carry them. So try to talk them through, evaluate what happened, and ultimately not carry those burdens day after day after day.
Sure. Can we talk about how SightCal got started, or just
Yeah.
what? I mean, what led to that? You said you were working together beforehand, and then three guys decided to start a business. So
Yeah.
what's that story?
So the path for me, if somebody wants to like take notes and follow this precisely,
Yeah.
is advancing in a corporation to the point of being central to the corporate office piece,
Yeah.
and then have that corporation bought out and be told you're no longer needed or wanted.
Ah,
That's
yes.
step one.
Step one.
It's not a real easy path to follow.
Sure. Yeah.
What happened was I was laid off through a large business acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
Went back to college, and at that point I was
How old were you in this when you were laid off?
30,
Wow.
31.
That's me. I'm 30. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that'd be a tough time. Young
Young
family.
kids.
Yeah.
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 We weren't done having kids at the time. We
Yeah.
had a few. So networking, who do you know?
Mm-hmm.
Where have you been? Where have you worked before that maybe still have connections, those kinds of things. And I took and reached out to the guys I worked with when we had lived in the Twin Cities. At the time, we were living in Marshall.
Oh, okay.
And my former employer, the manager, the supervisor, went and talked to him, went to where he was, and he said, "Hey, did you hear the guy that used to report to him was starting his own calibration business?" And it was something, you could talk about, hey, we could do this as a service on the side rather than in-house for a business, and
Yeah.
there's opportunity here. Well, he was actually doing it. And so it just so happened within a week they were going to be meeting, going out for dinner and talking about it. I joined them for it,
Yeah.
unsolicited. I was kind enough to tell them I was coming.
Yeah.
And from there, it started a roughly 3-year period of meeting on a regular basis. So every 2 or 3 weeks, driving there, meeting, talking about the business. We essentially became a board of directors
Sure. Yeah.
and performed actual job functions in helping Jerry, the majority owner, launch the business.
Mm-hmm.
But we did it totally for free.
Wow.
We didn't claim mileage. We didn't claim any wage.
Yeah.
We were just a part of, hey, let's see where this thing can go.
Sure. Yeah. That'd be tough. I mean, did you have another source of income at the time? Or was it just kind of what you had saved up that you were living off of?
Well, I had been in the military, so I had the GI Bill
Okay.
remaining, and I had gone back to college. So that was paying for my school, and it was paying for my housing.
Okay.
My wife was working, and because I had been a part of a large corporate takeover, they had this program. It was a dislocated workers program that also gave you some money to live on and paid for your tuition.
Sure. Yeah.
So maybe that makes me one of those people living off the system and exploiting it. But for that season of my life, I did.
Yeah.
Our household income went up.
Yeah.
I was laid off from work, and I was living off of benefits that were made available to us,
Yeah.
plus the GI Bill benefits, which I had earned, and our net was a gain.
Yeah. That's wild.
Uh,
Well, I think the important thing in that of like, living off the system or whatever, is that you did something with it.
I did finally finish my college degree.
Yeah.
I have 13 years of college.
Wow. Like a
and
double doctor.
like a bachelor's.
What's that, Tommy? Is it Tommy Boy?
Oh, thank you.
Lots of people go to school for 7 years. Yeah, they're called doctors.
Yeah, thank you for drawing that connection there.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. So the podcast is called A Name for Yourself, and I gave you kind of some background of where that comes from, and you're obviously very familiar with it. But it's the story of the Tower of Babel, and it's in Genesis chapter 11, I think. And all the people of the nations of the earth are gathered in one spot, and they conspire, if you will, to build this tower. And it sounds on the surface like, yeah, you're building a tower. We build lots of skyscrapers and towers. What's the big deal? You get a glimpse a little bit into their motivation behind it, because they say things like, let's do this and let's make a name for ourselves. And God doesn't outright condemn them for that statement, but the situation he does, and he scatters them and splits them up, and so that was a lot of where the name for this was going to be kind of derived from, because I think there are a lot of questions that people of faith have, but even if you're not a person of faith, of just how do I balance passion, motivation, drive, maybe even creativity, with not wanting selfish ambition, not wanting to build something to make a name for myself that builds myself up, that puffs myself up, but at the same time knowing that that's sometimes just a natural consequence of building things. You do get a name for yourself. You do have a good reputation, and those are all good things to aspire for. So curious what your thoughts would be on that, because from a distance you can typically tell someone when you kind of look at them. You kind of know where they might be at. If it's okay to just judge briefly or kind of broad brush, you kind of know, like, yeah, I can tell where their ambition is or where their heart is. So how would you recommend navigating those waters?
I feel like that was at least 4 of your questions.
Into one.
Yes.
Yeah, super efficient.
What came to mind for me, first off, everyone has a name for themselves already. Some good.
Yeah.
And when it comes to having a good name, right away, scripture came to mind for me. Proverbs, I want to say 2, verse 1. I hate to say chapter and verse because I almost never get it right.
It's in there. Just trust us.
It's in the Bible. But it says that to have a good name is better or more desirable than riches. Mm-hmm. And I can definitely attest to that. Just even in our community, you can look around and consider different individuals,
yeah,
and what they're known for, what their reputation is. Mm-hmm. And it usually doesn't have anything to do with the economics of the situation. It's how they treat people. It's how they conduct their business. And it's hard to reel that back in once you've done something that shows who you are. Mm-hmm. So I try to focus on that as an important aspect of, am I being diligent in what I'm doing? So whatever my area of responsibility is, whatever my tasks are, am I diligently performing them? Am I giving it my best? When it comes to who I'm doing it for, am I operating in submission to them?
Mm-hmm.
Am I coming in under their authority, or am I trying to somehow steer the ship from the middle of the pack? It doesn't work.
Sure.
When it comes to the notion of selfish ambition,
Mm-hmm.
I think about the why. Why do it? If the reason for doing it is to draw attention to myself or to puff myself up,
Mm-hmm.
pat myself on the back, it's probably not a good enough reason. But if it's going to encourage someone else or bless them in some way, then it has value. Then it's worth doing. And that could be for an in-house customer. Could be someone at Relco that needs something to do their job better, and I'm able to oversee the project that equips them with that.
Mm-hmm.
Could be for a customer, and we're able to provide a service that meets their need and keeps them in compliance and lets them be profitable and run with what they're doing.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. I also know that there's this weight in especially young people's lives, especially young people that grow up in the church and maybe have a lot of passion or drive or whatever and want to create something. They feel almost a burden that if they will Christianize whatever they're doing, that it then becomes okay or in some ways more holy. And so it's like any business, no matter how related or unrelated it may be missionally to the kingdom, if I can just lead with that note and kind of fit a formula to say like, well, this is how we're a Christian business, or how this is a Christian activity, then it must be good, and God has to bless it then because it's Christian. So how would you respond to that?
Just like Dwight Schrute. Or my little buddy, Ian Melbrook. I would say false.
Yes. Yes.
False. Do we need to be ethical in our business operations and those types of things? Yes. Do I think a business can be a Christian business? No. I think Christian applies to an individual. And whether or not they are in right standing with God through Jesus.
Sure. Wow. Yeah.
So we can do things, whether it's in business or in church, that advance an agenda. I think as long as that is advancing what we understand to be the kingdom of God agenda, then we're operating it in the right way. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the business is out there spreading the gospel.
Yeah.
There's the scripture that talks about one body, many parts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there has to be someone out there that's generating enough income that they can support the other activities.
Mm-hmm.
So even that simple act of being profitable has a role to play in
Sure.
the overall purpose.
Yeah. And that can be a very hard role to play too. There's a lot of warnings against being the rich man. You know,
Yeah.
it's not, I mean, I think a lot of people would look at that and be like, oh, sign me up. If you need me to be that part of the body, I'll be that part of the body.
You can be sitting and listening to somebody that's out there doing great things.
Yeah.
And they're like, if you want to get on our newsletter, if you want to, support us by praying for us, everybody's all, yeah. Or if you want to give financially, and the room goes, wah, wah, wah. That's a big deal is, we're talking about career mainly here.
Mm-hmm.
Work-wise, things we do.
Yeah.
There has to be the why do you do it?
Right.
And what do you do with the proceeds from it?
Right.
A big part of that for me personally is understanding giving and the importance of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a well, I'd say it's one of our core values as a family.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that we give everywhere, every time to everyone, but when we believe that we should, we do.
Mm-hmm.
And to just let that flow in a way that it's not ours, but that we hear about the need, we know that we have the opportunity to meet the need, and we feel that it's the right move, we'll do it.
Hmm. I want to go back to the point you said earlier too about, can a business be Christian? I think that's a really interesting perspective. I think a lot of people, I would never really give that a second thought if somebody said like, "Oh, yeah, we're a Christian business." Like, yeah, okay, I'm sure you are, whatever. Kind of write it off. It doesn't, in my mind, separate them or anything. But when we do think critically about it, that is a really interesting perspective. Can a business be Christian, or is that just a marketing shtick?
That's between them and God.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I guess I never thought about that before. Hmm. Well, on the topic of a name for yourself, reputation, uh, what a marketer might call brand. If you had to speculate, what do you suppose your brand is? I mean, what do you think other people's impression of you is? Positively, can include negative things too if you want, but in a positive way, what do you think your name for yourself really is?
You could get a lot of different answers to that question based on who you would ask.
Mm-hmm.
I I frequently find myself misunderstood by others. Sometimes it's negative, and sometimes not.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes not. A funny observation that comes up pretty regularly is that people find themselves to be extremely intimidated.
Mm.
They'll say, "Man, when I first met you, I was so intimidated. Like I thought you were scary or whatever for whatever reason." Part of me says that's a misunderstanding, and part of me says, "Yep, I meant that."
Depending on who it was.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So brand, what that brings to mind for me is when I encounter people and they say things like they make a proclamation about themselves,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm gonna be a warrior, for lack of a better example. I'm gonna be tough. I'm gonna stand up for what I'm gonna do, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna take a stand. And all I can think about when I hear that from somebody is, shut up and do it. you
Mm-hmm.
know so
Mm-hmm.
I don't try to make a practice of proclaiming what I would do. I instead know what I purpose to do, and I just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the doing, it becomes evident. So I have a question for you.
Okay, sure.
How do you see my brand?
Hmm.
What's your impression?
Flip the script. I have a feeling that's going to happen to me a lot. I should maybe reevaluate that question. No, I think that's fairly easy. Yeah, I would describe you as someone who is deliberate, um, strong, and steady, which is probably plays into a little bit of the intimidation. I don't think you're necessarily not an intimidating guy, which I think is an area that um, most men should navigate well. There are times where intimidation is a good card to play, not to intimidate women or children or anything like
No.
that, but um, you have a certain burden. I feel like as a man to stand up to bullies or to be a protector, and so I think there's certainly a lack of that in our culture. I think you're a good example of someone who carries that well, even if it means being misunderstood from time to time. Just kind of comes with the territory of manhood. Uh, Intelligent. Um, maybe it's off about the word wise. I think I've come to you a number of times for your perspective on a situation, and you bring a steadiness and a countenance in the way that you see things that I have come to trust. Um, and then I think you have a very admirable and what most people should covet, that heart of a father. I think that you see that displayed in many categories of just how you interact with people. I think another good example of that would be with the Balaton. I'm blanking on the title.
The chaplaincy.
Yeah, the chaplaincy with Balaton, because in a lot of ways that is a uh, father's father. That's the definition. And so when you look at a group of people that you feel like are just could use that encouragement, that awareness, that leadership in those areas, you feel a need to step in or to lean in. So I probably don't have a succinct way of saying all that, but yeah, I think that's your brand from my observations at least.
Very, very kind observations.
Yeah, I left out all the negative things.
There are those.
Yeah. So I guess one of the last questions. You can have your coffee, by the way.
Sorry,
That's fine. You already had too much, didn't you? You limit yourself. You're like, after a certain point, you're not having any more.
I am a coffee snob.
Yeah, that's true. You don't do Folgers. I get it. I have to up my game. I can feel the hipster comments already just tearing us apart online with our Folgers coffee. But anyway, last question, or last area, I should say. It might bring up more questions. What advice would you have for someone that wherever they are right now, if they're in high school or college, or maybe they're 30 and just got laid off, feeling like, this isn't where I want to be. This isn't what I want to be doing. It's wrong. Whatever I'm doing right now is not the right thing, and I need to find the right thing as soon as possible and move in that direction. Because I think that's a really common feeling, that I need to move and get there, and fast and big and success. And as someone that I feel like is steady and wise, what advice would you have?
Don't invest in cryptocurrency.
Well, I already broke that rule.
So what I'm saying is none of who I am or where I'm at happened fast. Mm. And there's a lot of truth to doing the right things first. Mm-hmm. I think a person needs to focus on an honest self-evaluation. Mm-hmm. Are they trustworthy? Are they someone that can be depended upon? Are they honest? Some of us may pretend to be honest, but we hold back. We don't offer full disclosure. If somebody comes to us and they give us whatever responsibility it is, whatever task, can they just walk away knowing that you've got it? Mm-hmm. And when they come back, they're going to find it better? That's not true for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. When nobody's around and nobody's watching and there's no real accountability, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. What things do you have going on in your life that really have no value? They fill time. And I'm not condemning people that like to watch YouTube channels. Mm-hmm. I
like this one.
I will sit and have breakfast on a Saturday morning and play
Yeah.
things from YouTube.
Yep.
It's not a problem. But if you're spending 4.5 hours a day
Mm-hmm.
consuming irrelevant things, I don't want to get into a list of what they are.
Sure.
That's such a drain
Mm-hmm.
on where you could be going. And then when it comes to things like SightCal, we put in the years up front of not taking anything from it.
Mm-hmm.
I think almost any real startup, you have to do that
Yeah.
in one form or fashion. You have to not take from it. But then when you get established, you do need to receive from
Mm-hmm.
it the reward that's there. And don't worry about going from 0 to 1 million. Think about, okay, we made $15,000 year one. That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Year two, we hit 30. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
Now if it's, if that's a 1 week, we got problems going on.
Sure.
So and that doesn't happen in a year. That doesn't happen in 5 years for most
Mm-hmm.
people. I think there's a real danger when success comes too fast.
Hmm.
And the reason isn't because the money is bad or the success is bad, but whatever you have, however you operate, if you infuse more money into it, it's going to amplify whatever's there.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody has a minor gambling habit and they get a whole lot more money, they're probably going to not have a minor gambling habit after that.
Sure. Yeah.
So are you being faithful? Are you being a good steward of what you've got right now?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a 30-something and you've got a certain set of skills, particular set of skills, and you have a certain amount of time, you have things that you're interested in, how are you using them?
Mm-hmm.
How are you engaging them for the benefit of others? That would be the challenge to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And not to expect it to be, well, man, I worked hard at that for a month. Why isn't it working?
A whole month.
It takes time.
Something I heard in that I know because of our exterior relationship from this episode, you've been kind of hot on for a while now, that I feel like is coming through in this, is that idea of, you have to help me with the exact language, but tending your own vineyard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just the idea of there are, if we look in ourselves and just our own individual situations, there's a lot of progress we can make. That's that's completely in our control.
Mm-hmm.
That will set a really good foundation, and then to be patient as we put our hands to different things and invest into things and build things, and not just focus on, I turn these knobs and dials and this has to work now, regardless of who you are and kind of how you've cared for your time and what God's already given you,
Mm-hmm.
and how you've stewarded what you have.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's a really important concept. I think it's something that
Got it.
got it. Something that enables me to have cat-like reflexes, just like that. I think it's something that breeds contentment. That no matter how successful at times a person can feel, if they physically don't feel well, if they emotionally don't feel well,
Mm-hmm.
spiritually don't feel well, there's no amount of success that can sometimes overcome that slump, that feeling when you're on your couch.
No amount of money.
Yeah. And so kind of solving those things first really, really helps, but it's just not that glamorous.
No, I think that's one of the things I'd create a monthly devotional, like it's a printed thing I put out at the fire department.
Mm-hmm.
Call it the Chaplain's Corner. And there'll be a topic, there'll be a study, but there's a little corner on there that says spiritual fitness, mental fitness, physical fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those have to be in place, I think, for a person to really be whole
Mm-hmm.
and enjoying life.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Those are hard waters to navigate, especially alone. I feel like you need community, guidance, mentorship. I mean, if in some, if not all those categories.
Community is essential.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all realized that last year quickly.
Yeah.
In the absence of community, what that does to us, it deteriorates all of those other areas.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, any other topics you want to cover? Any questions I sent you that we didn't get to that you were giddy to answer?
Purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Why don't you hit on that? I mean, what do you feel, where do you find purpose in what you do?
The question as it was worded related to job.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the words used in there.
Yeah.
And much like you don't like the word entrepreneur,
Not a big fan.
entrepreneur, you use the word job, and I honestly don't feel like I have a job.
Mm-hmm.
I serve in organizations and I have responsibilities, and even go so far as to provide jobs
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
for other people. But I think of purpose and what gives me that feeling of, okay, that's why I'm here. That had value. It's very rarely in the performing of the duties and responsibilities. It's almost exclusive to interactions with people. So a meaningful conversation, someone coming and looking for input and then actually doing it, or somebody that's in a tough place and confiding and availing themselves to counsel or praying with them, whatever it may be, and seeing their life actually changed by it. Those are the types of experiences and interactions that, to me, define what is my purpose, what has real value.
Yeah.
And I know when they happen. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, that's why.
Yeah.
It's why I'm on this earth.
Yeah. Yeah, those are those little things that are actually really big things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hmm.
It comes from loving and serving people well. And it's not something that comes naturally. Definitely not to me. And that's not to say that I just walk around hating people.
Right.
But to really like love them and care about where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing a devotion with my wife the other day, and it asked the question of, what's the first thing you think about when you walk into a room full of people? And if you can picture it, there's a room, it's crowded, not too crowded,
Mm-hmm.
20 people. If the first thing you think about is, fill in the blank.
Exits, threats, weapons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exits. Okay.
No, I'm not that tactical.
Some people are going to walk into that room and they're going to think, is there something on my face? How do I look? So what I'm wearing, is this the right thing to wear here? Or,
Yeah.
oh, I forgot to call so-and-so and there they are.
Mm-hmm.
Or when they walk into the room, are they thinking about, oh, I wonder, there's, Jim, I wonder how he's doing. What's been going on since he had that medical crisis?
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about everyone in the room and what's going on with them and what they might need. Because what happened to me in the past is I would be the one that came into that room and was like, is there something on my face? Do I look all right?
Yeah.
And all that would do is breed a self-focused, insecure, almost like anxiety. And like, how long do I got to stay here and when can I leave?
Yeah.
Versus walking into that room and thinking about others. What do they got going on? Where do they need something?
Mm-hmm.
How are they feeling? You know, and you can approach it from a being caring, you know, and it's subtle.
Mm-hmm.
You're still just that person walking into that room, but it's a very different approach.
Yeah. That's a good question. Yeah. I don't even have the answer, but I think that's the right answer. But I don't know how I would answer it.
All right.
Food for thought. Awesome. Well, thank you for reminding me that question. I would have been sad if we missed that. Yeah. But thanks again for joining us on A Name for Yourself podcast. I'll have to have you back again soon.
What are we going to talk about?
I don't know. Coffee? Better brands?
If you get better coffee.
Yeah. I
No.
love that you didn't even touch it. It's like it's got leprosy. Like you don't want your home coffee to know that you were out fornicating with some lowbrow coffee.
I tell my wife, just buy Caribou, medium roast. It's good.
Yeah.
Well, we occasionally run out and we have other coffee and she'll make it and she'll be like, oh, this is terrible. Why don't you just buy the Caribou medium roast?
Well,
You
maybe
find something good, stick with it.
I try to, but sometimes I go to Walmart, sometimes I go to Aldi, sometimes I go to Hy-Vee, all different kind of brands. But I do like Caribou, obviously, just because I'm a Minnesota guy and gotta support local brands.
And it's good coffee.
And it is good coffee. Yep, it is. Awesome. Let's break.
All right.